you mentioned Popper a number of times, who of course says the most important thing we can try and do with a theory is falsify it. And I feel like people really struggle to get what it means to falsify a theory. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on how you can help students, and especially young scholars, really understand and embrace the notion of falsification, and maybe what we can say to reviewers to get them to back off when their results are not perfect, right? Because they're trying to falsify, so.
Right, and we also, we are tenured full professors and need to understand the reality of junior faculty who are struggling to get published, and they see certain norms in the field. If you find statistically significant effects, you're more likely to be published. If you find large effects, you're more likely to be published. If you find support for hypotheses, you're more likely to be published. And that reward system obviously is critical in terms of whether a junior faculty sees his or her ability to get tenure as high or low. So the reward will dictate some of that behavior. And when you read some of the articles published in our top journals, they look perfect.
Yeah.
You have some logic, hypothesis 1, logic, hypothesis 2, the results section, hypothesis 1, supported, hypothesis 2, supported. It's like, that's not, when I do my research, it doesn't happen that way.
Right.
So I make the analogy that if you go to a French restaurant and you order a fabulous entree, you look at that plate and you see the textures, you see the colors, you see the placement of the different components, and everything looks perfect. Then you go home and you try to replicate that in your own kitchen.
Right.
It is impossible. And the reason for that is that the chef went through 20 trials and errors until the chef was able to come up with this fabulous entree.
Right.
So in a paper we published in the Academy of Management Annals, we say that often when you read a paper, you don't know what happened in the research kitchen.
Right.
You just don't know how that paper was cooked. So when you try to replicate it or do the same thing, you start reading the details and you're missing a lot of information that is needed to replicate and possibly try to falsify, meaning trying to prove that maybe those findings are not there. So we have on the one hand the pressure to publish in top journals. On the other hand, insufficient transparency in many of the published papers. And yet another issue, which is decreased support for research and doctoral programs in many business schools. Because business deans are under financial pressures, and if they need to put a full professor in a classroom with 40 paying MBAs or 40 paying undergrads versus 4 non-paying PhD students,
right,
from the financial perspective, the dean will want to put the professor with the MBAs. So what's happening is that there are fewer and fewer seminars being offered to doctoral students. And you have more and more sophisticated methods and theories. So how can you do that as a junior faculty member? You have the pressure to publish, insufficient transparency, and maybe not enough skills to the research to be able to publish in top journals. So you might engage in some of these what we call questionable research practices. You include, talking about control variables, you
right,
may have 5 control variables that you try. If the results don't look good, you take those out and try 5 different control variables until you find the set that gives you the results you want, which means the hypotheses are supported. Similarly with outliers. If you see a couple of outliers and you remove them, if you see that the effect size goes down, you don't remove them. If
right,
the effect size is high, you keep them in there because your results will look better. That entree will look more perfect. So we have problems with that because the name of the game is to find statistically significant results, to find large effects. So some journals are trying new, more innovative practices in the publication process, and we explained this in a paper just published in Organizational Behavior and Human Decision Processes, in which we offer 10 actionable recommendations for journal editors to improve the transparency, replicability, and replicability of the publication process. For example, think about the dissertation procedure. The student submits a proposal based on the theory, on the measures, on the design, without the results. And the committee evaluates the quality of the proposed research and approves the quality of the proposed research without seeing the results first, without saying the results look good in terms of supporting the hypotheses. So some journals are now including that as a registered report or pre-registration, where you actually submit your paper to the journal using the same format as in dissertation proposals without the results. And then unless something changes in your protocol, the paper will be accepted even if you show the results are not significant. That would be a way to falsify theories, because you would have that space to do that, because if the results show that they're not statistically significant, the paper will be published anyway.
That's also really important, because not only does it change the way in which peer review happens, it actually speaks to the importance of theory, because that is the basis for judgment about the value and the utility of the investigation in the first place.
Exactly.
Cool.